Hey, welcome back to another episode. In this episode, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working with Interface Builder. And Interface Builder is a RubyMotion gem. It can be found at github.com/RubyMotion/IB. And this is what the GitHub repo looks like. It's got some instructions on getting this set up within your application. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a brand new RubyMotion application on my computer. So I'm not going to use RubyMine today. I'm just going to go ahead and use my terminal and Sublime Text. So right off the bat, we're going to run motion create and then the name of our application, which is going to be Interface Builder. I'm going to hit on enter and this will create that directory for us and place those default files in there. We'll go ahead and we'll change directory to Interface Builder. And then we'll just clear this up so that we have a clear canvas to work with. Now, the first thing we want to do is go ahead and add this to our gem file. So what I'll do is I'll open up Sublime, and I'll open this directory within Sublime. So just click on enter. It'll go ahead and open that up for me. I'll click on gem file here, and under add your dependencies, I'm going to go ahead and place that gem IB. Then I'll save that, and then I'll jump back into my terminal, and I'll just run bundle. It's been installed. Great. So we'll clear that up, and then now we'll jump right back into our browser to see what's next. So if you're not using Bundler, just like I was, then you want to make sure that you require Ruby gems and that you require IB. But if you're using Bundler, you can leave your rake file alone. So let's scroll down to the next step, and instead of using this the manual way, I want to use this the fun way, which is to use a generator. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this generator command right here. I'll paste that into my terminal, and I'll make some minor edits here. We're not going to need any accessors for this example, so I'm going to remove that line. And then for actions say hello, I'll just leave that alone, and I'll come up here to my outlets. Now the outlets are the things like the text fields, the labels, the UI scroll views, the buttons, and the objects that you're going to see on your canvas, on your app. So what I'll do is I'll set up a label here, and this will be a UI label class, so it'll be an instance of UI label. So let me just quickly explain what I've just done. This first part is the name of the outlet or the label. And then this part here, the second part, is the class. So we can do that for all the outlets that we want to use. So what I'll do is I'll set up a field, and this will be a UI text field. And then I'll set up a button, and this will be a UI button. I'll also go ahead and set up another label, and this will be the hello label. And this won't really do anything. It'll just be in there so I can demonstrate constraints. So I'll go ahead and I'll just create that label. And then if we go up to the next, or this first line, I'm going to change hello to root. And actually, I'm going to name it root view, and I'll show you what that does. So I'll click on enter. It'll run this command. You'll notice it created root view controller. So using camel case here with the root view actually triggered the generator to go ahead and add in a underscore so that it actually uses some best practices here. Then it's also created a helper and a spec file for us. We're not going to jump into those within this demo, so you can just forget about those for now. Let's now jump into Sublime so we can see what this looks like. So I go to Sublime, and if we go into app, you see it created a controllers directory and a helpers directory. Under spec, it's created the controller specs. So we'll just go ahead and open up this controller here and take a look at what's going on. Well, the generator went ahead and created a root view controller class for us, and it's assigned it to inherit from the UI view controller. Next, it's extending the capabilities or the features that the IB gem has added to our application. Now, if we added in some adder accessors, it would go ahead and add those here appropriately. And now you can see the outlets here. So if I move this down a little bit, we can go ahead and see how this translated over. So we have our 4 outlets. 2 of them are the UI labels. One of them is a UI text field, and another one is a UI button. So these outlets were from this second line right here. Now that third line where we have the actions, what Interface Builder went ahead and did for us was it created the action. So it named it say hello, just like we have right here. And then it's setting up to have it pass a parameter through, and that's going to be the sender. And below that, we can go ahead and add in our code that's going to be run when this action is triggered. I'll have it put hello into our console view. And that's all I'll do for now. So I'll go ahead and I'll save this file. We'll jump back into our terminal and we'll run rakeib. So if we go back into that documentation, we scroll down a little bit, and what rakeib will do is it'll set up the ib.xcode project within our app directory. So I'll go ahead and I'll run that, and it'll set everything up for us. So if we jump back into Sublime, we'll see that it's gone ahead and has created this ib.xcode project directory for us. And it's also opened up Xcode in the background. So if I take a look at that and I expand this IB area, you'll see that I've got these different directories in here. Now, for now, we're just going to focus on the resources directory. So I'll open this up. And within resources, we're seeing that we have the same files as we do within our resources folder within our app project. So if I open that up in Sublime and I take a look at resources, we have all of those PNG files just like we do within Xcode over here. This is also the directory that you're going to want to save your storyboards to. So do make sure that when you create a new storyboard, you stick those into your resources directory here. So it's going to be resources, resources, and then you'd put your storyboard in there. Before we jump into Xcode, we're going to take the recommendation that they offered within this tip, and we're going to add this ib.xcode project to our get_ignore file. So I'll go ahead and I'll go to get_ignore and I'll add that to the end. So we'll just save that, and then we'll jump back into Xcode here and we will add our storyboard. So to add it, you just right click on resources, then you click on new file, and for storyboard you can either double click on storyboard, you can click on next, and then you'd go ahead and you'd name that storyboard. So since this is going to be for the root view controller, I'm just going to name this root as a storyboard, and then I'm going to click on create. What that does is it creates a storyboard, and you'll notice it changes the Xcode interface. So if you're not familiar with Xcode as of yet, just go ahead and follow along. We can get familiar in a later lesson. But just know that this is the root storyboard, and you can begin adding things in like view controllers, labels, text fields, buttons, and things like that. And to do that, what you would do is you come down to this right-hand corner here. You'd click, and then you drag and drop view controller within this area right here. So I'll go ahead and I'll just drop that in. And you'll see that we have this interface here that we can now begin working with. This is the view controller that we're going to be associating with that root view controller. And you notice this is kind of wide here. And I was playing around with the Xcode interface, and I noticed that if I disable the size classes here, it actually brings it back to what you would think an iPhone would look like within this view. So I went ahead and just disabled or unchecked use size classes here, and it went ahead and narrowed out the interface for the view controller for us. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we're clicked on, or we've highlighted view controller here. Jump into this third icon right here, which is the identity inspector, and you'll see class. And in class, what you want to do is start typing in root view, and you'll notice that it went ahead and it filled in the rest of this for us. And that is because Interface Builder has already placed this root view controller association within our Xcode project here, and I'll show you exactly what that looks like. So if I click on enter, and then I click on this little arrow here, that'll take us to the code itself. And this code is actually within the supporting files under stubs.h. So this is the view controller that we're going to be working with, and these are the outlets. So you see that Interface Builder went ahead and it created the code that we can now begin to associate the objects that we're placing within the Interface Builder to the code within our RubyMotion project. So let's go ahead and jump back into our storyboard here, and we're going to add in two labels. So for the first one, what we're going to do is we're going to place this into the center, and then we're going to just type in change text, and let me recenter this. And then I'll come back down here and I'll add in another label. This label, I'll just have it at the bottom, and this will be a static label. Nothing's going to be done here. I'm just going to place that there, and we're going to see what the constraints will do. So we have these two centered on the page. Next thing we'll do is we'll add in a field. This will be for the text field, and we will be adding some text into this within our application. So I'm going to go ahead and make this a little wider here, and then we're going to add in a button. So this button, we'll drag it into here. We will center this as well. And then we can get started on our auto layout constraints. So if you've gone through the auto constraint videos, or if you've worked with constraints before in RubyMotion, you know that there's a lot of code involved with setting those up. And sometimes it can be a headache to try to remember how you've placed things within your code. Well, in Interface Builder, working with constraints is actually very, very easy. All you have to do is select the objects, come down to this second icon right here, and this will allow you to add some new constraints. And what I'll do is I'll just make sure that these objects stay where they are by adding constraint to the right, the left, and the top. Now, once I add these constraints, you'll see that some lines have been set up. And this is to help you visually see what's going on here. So I'm just going to click off of this, and I'm just going to save my storyboard. Now, feel free to play around with the text. You can go ahead and you can change what this text looks like by jumping into this fourth icon right here. This is the attributes inspector, and you can change the text and everything in here. I recommend editing all of that before adding the constraints. That way you don't have to worry about changing the constraints or modifying the constraints after you've edited them. The next step would be to open up our assistant editor, and let me go ahead and create some room here. Our assistant editor will allow us to go ahead and associate the IB outlets with the objects within our interface builder. So if I go ahead and I click on this change text and I hold control on my keyboard and then I drag it, what will happen is it'll create this line here where we can associate this label with the IB outlet in our code. So I'm going to go ahead and just release it onto this label here. Then we'll grab our text field. I'll hold control and I'll release it onto UI text field. And then I'll do the same thing for the button and the label below. And now you notice that we have this IB action here. Well, we can actually associate this action with our object on our interface builder by doing the same exact thing. So if we click on button, we hold control, and we just release this onto the IB action, you'll notice that our associations have now all been set. So let's go ahead and save this. The next thing we'll do is we'll jump into Sublime, and we need to add some code to our app delegate file. So what we'll do is we'll just take all of this right here out, and I'll go back into the GitHub repo, and there's a sample app down here. I'm just going to copy some of the code from sample app. Actually, let me scroll up, sample app. Okay. And then we go to the app delegates, and we'll just take this whole file right here. So I'll take that highlighted and paste it in. Next, we'll change this storyboard name to root. So that's a lowercase r, so R-O-O-T. If this file was capitalized, make sure that the R is capitalized as well. Then I'll go ahead and I'll save this file, jump back into our terminal, and I'll just type in rake, hit that, and it should build this for us. And actually it went ahead and crashed. This has happened to me before, and it's telling you that you need to have your @window here associated with a root view controller. Now it appears that we are setting the root view controller. Something's just not going on right here. I wasn't able to figure out what was wrong. So what I did was I just took this instantiate initial view controller, opened up my documentation, and I went ahead and I just placed that into my documentation. And I noticed that there was an instantiate initial view controller, and then there was an instantiate view controller with identifier. And this is basically the view controller identifier within your storyboard. So what we'll do is we'll just take this right here, we'll paste that in, and you need to pass in a string. We're going to call this identifier root as well, and then we will jump back into Xcode and remove the assistant editor here. Actually, I'll just open up the side, and I'll click on root view controller, and I'll go to this identity inspector, and you'll see under identity we have storyboard ID. Right in there, I'll go ahead and I'll type in root, and I'll hit enter and save this. Now I'll jump back into my terminal and I'll run rake again, and this should actually start up. Unfortunately it crashed. Let me see why. Let me go back into Sublime, and it looks like I didn't save this. So that might have done it. Now let's try to run rake again and cross our fingers. All right, so the app started up for us. This is fantastic. And we're actually seeing the labels, the text field, and the button that we created within the view. So let me go ahead and test these constraints out real quick. And it doesn't look like they're working quite correctly. That's okay. When you have time, go ahead and play around with the constraints. I just went ahead and I just created them really quickly. But for now, let's just go ahead and worry about the functionality here. So we have the label, we have this text field. I can actually type stuff in here and remove things. If we click on the button, we'll notice that we get the hello within our terminals. So that's working great. Let's jump back into Sublime and let's take a look at our controller. Now what I want to do is I want to take the information that we type into the field and I want it to change the text within this label. So to do that, I'll go ahead and I'll get the label.text and I'll set it to the field.text, and we'll go ahead and we'll save this. Now we will exit out and rerun rake. And then if we type something into this field, it should change that text right above it. Awesome. Everything seems to be working correctly in terms of functionality. Again, you're going to want to go into Xcode and experiment a little bit with the auto constraints. I obviously need a little bit more practice, but we now know how to get started with Interface Builder. And we now have the option to use a tool like Xcode to visually place the objects within our app. Now, some people may prefer this, some people may not. Personally, I like working with the code, but if I wanted to create an app super quick, this might be a way that I would go ahead and choose to do it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you guys in the next one.